I live in Newtown, Connecticut. I say that all the time on these calls. Most of the time, I don't know if people even really listen, or if they do, they notice what that is, where this place is. There was a time after the Sandy Hook shootings in 2012, which happened here, that I wouldn't say I lived in Newtown. Still, sometimes on calls and times, I say I live in Connecticut, near the Danbury area. I started my work as a convener, host of groups in Sandy Hook, 3 minutes from that school. And when the shootings happened, I thought, I the whole world was grieving with Newtown. It was an unbelievable and overwhelming experience, and it was, of course, this deep and terrible tragedy, but there was also something unbelievably beautiful about it. Particularly because, unlike, say, 9/11, we weren't going to go to war over this. And in the immediate aftermath, it wasn't like there was anyone even to hate, or blame. It's like, as far as everyone could tell, everyone did the best they could, and this was just something really tragic and an example of how broken we are collectively. And so we were all just sitting in grief, and got to do something, got to get into action, right? And so I thought, hey, what have I been learning to do for the last 3 years? Bring the whole world into dialogue using global technologies. The whole world's paying attention. I could get thousands of people into conversation. And I gathered some of my best colleagues. I think Heather was among that core group, and others from the National Coalition for Dialogue and Deliberation. And we were thinking about this and planning. And meanwhile, my wife wanted me to grieve with her and be present for her, and I kind of got off on this trip, and it was just, I could talk for an hour about this and how crazy it was, what was going on in that moment, that made me look at where I was as the freaking center of the universe, with all that I was connected to and could pull together. For example, the Birth 2012 event, do any of you remember that Barbara Marx Hubbard organized? A global event of healing and rebirth. It was the day after the end of the Mayan calendar, and she'd been planning this for years, and I was there at the core of this planning, and when it was announced a year and a half before, and that happened within a week of those shootings, and there was one of these local nodes, in-person nodes, that had been organized right here in Newtown. And I was plugged into this global thing that was going to happen, where she was declaring, yeah, it's not that the whole world ended, an era ended and a new one is being born. And wow, how profound is that, right? There's a thunderstorm story even about that I could tell. It's so crazy you're talking about it, because in one of the planning meetings, back in the fall of 2011 for Birth 2012, we stopped a thunderstorm with heart math power. It was like insane. Barbara was speaking. We were outside this tent, and the storm is raging. And she had this group of 150 people all breathe together in unison. And we did it. And the second we completed our third breath, the storm just went from 10 to 0. Anyway, so this was happening. And I'm like reaching out to her and other people saying, we can do something here. The world can be transformed through this grief, through this unity. Here's global unity. We're feeling it. It's manifesting. But it didn't happen. She was busy, and the Newtown group rightly said, you know what, we actually don't want to plug into this global thing. We should just look inward and take care of ourselves and do something a little different from what we planned. Anyway, so I just said, okay, I need to grieve. That was my lesson. I need to do that. And then I got this invitation to go out to Whidbey Island for what's a regular gathering there in January. This is outside of Seattle, and it's not far from where Heather is. I'm not super close, but I went out. I asked Heather, did she want to do this with me? And I went to spend some time with her, and then we drove up. Yes, I was right there in that room. And we're planning what we're going to do. because the way this gathering works, it's kind of like little TED Talks in the mornings and then open space in the afternoons. And we were scheduled for the end of the second morning out of 3 days. So we're right at sort of the fulcrum of this whole thing. And we've been reading Meg Wheatley talking about grief and how we're lost, and you know, we have to stop thinking we're going to save the world, because that's just leading us into despair, because guess what, we're not. It's too late. We don't have the power, even if we could still, you know, press a button and make it all change. You know, maybe it's not too late in terms of the physics, but in terms of the reality. Wheatley saying after decades of thinking this could work, it's not. And Heather and I are like, you know, we're going to say this. We're going to say we need to grieve, and we're recovering saviors. That was our line. We thought that was so cute. We invented a 12-step program. So we created this thing, and we had this story in our heads about how it's going to just kind of, we're afraid, you know, how's this going to land? So the morning of the second day comes around, and our friend and colleague Gretchen Crump opens the space for the day, saying, today is St. Bridget's Day. And she's a pagan saint. You remember this, Heather, right? She is the saint of keening, of, you know, of calling out in grief, you know, collectively, women just sort of, you know, howling in grief. And the whole room did that. She had no idea what we were going to talk about. We didn't tell anybody. So, you know, we weren't out of line at all. We were channeling that moment. And the next couple of speakers before us, you know, also were somehow setting us up for what we did. And then we got up and we spoke. And it was just so, it was, you know, this beautiful piece of work, you know, one of the most perfect and beautiful pieces of work that I've ever been a part of. And you know, a lot of it was having a colleague and a partner like you, Heather. And there were a couple of things in it. I guess it was during that time that I learned about the David Whyte poem. And David Whyte, the poet, is part of that community on Whidbey Island. He lives there, I think. He wasn't at that gathering, but he's, so our colleague Ann Stadler told me about this poem, The Well of Grief, which I was listening to the song, and she says it's time to go down to the well, right? That's the Thrive Choir one. It is time now. It's time for us to thrive. It's time for us to go into the well. So I thought I might read that, but then as I was looking, I thought, oh, I think it's on this. I created this page. I can't, was this before or after? I think it might have been right before we went to Whidbey Island. I've done this, maybe this was the first time. It's like, I called it a memorial wall. There was so much beauty in Newtown after the shooting. Somebody, I have no idea who, just on the side of a road, right near an entrance to a highway, in a not especially special spot, put these 26 angels, and they were there for like a whole week. I don't know, they just, something about them. I made, this was like my wallpaper on my computer, and I would just look at it and cry. We got like 60,000 teddy bears or something, and more than that, we, you know, and then it snowed. People, there were shrines everywhere. See the pictures there. And people put things on this wall, and here's the angels again at night. People attached balloons to them, and they were lit up. And this is another poem that I was thinking about listening to you. Maybe you want, would you read this? No, aloud though? Would you be willing to do that? Is it big enough? Can you read it?
You've asked who?
I'm sorry?
Are you going to read it out loud? Who's going to read it?
I was inviting you to read it if you would like.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. I was already looking at the text. If allowed to, grief doesn't just break the heart, but breaks it open, ultimately breaking us open to unbroken being. Huge heartache, huge hurt, huge opening, carrying us through the deepest sorrow into a spaciousness as naturally compassionate as it is vast. In such spaciousness, such exquisitely raw openness, there is eventually room for all.
This is a house that's just down the street from the school. I don't know if you can read what's in the window there. These signs showed up all over town. It says, we are Sandy Hook, we choose love. And at we closed our little presentation at the Whidbey Institute with this song. So there's a musician here in town, Jim Allen, who teaches as well. He's very talented, lovely man. Um, and he got together with some of his students. I guess he wrote this song, and then he got together with some of his students and recorded it, and then made a video. And we play this at the end of our talk, and then we were done. It was a break for lunch. We told people we would do an open space session that was just a grief circle, and many people came to that. Other people told us later that they were with us, but they didn't want to be in the circle, and they took a walk. But it was just, it was this pivot point in that gathering that was quite remarkable. So I'll just close this by sharing this. I think I need to stop the share for a second. And then redo it. Share sound. Okay. Y'all see this? Yeah?
I see a black screen now.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Oh, wait. Let's start again with the audio on.